Hey, what's up YouTube? Today we're going to be taking a look at quite possibly some pickup shots that you may have either taken on an event shoot or maybe for one of your vlogs, and potentially using some of this footage to integrate into maybe one of your production cameras or one of your more professional cameras like a mirrorless camera or a DSLR. Specifically in this video, we're going to be talking about integrating iPhone footage into Pocket 4K footage. Quick disclaimer off top, this video is not meant to compare the footage coming out of iPhone 8 in this instance to the Pocket 4K. However, it is for individuals out there who may have, like I was saying earlier, may have had some pickup shots that they wanted to integrate, or they may have had some clients that maybe shot some footage on their iPhone, or maybe they had some of their employees shooting footage on their iPhones or other smartphone devices. And now maybe in turn, these clients are now requesting that some of this footage gets put into maybe a final project that you guys are working on. Now, if you do check out some of the other content on this channel, make sure you do check it out, but then some of the information that you may have gotten from it, or if you by any chance learned anything from some of the experiences that I'm having on some of the shoots that I'm doing from behind the scenes, all I ask you not to do is subscribe to this channel. All that does is make the comment section just a little bit more strenuous for me to take a look at. And as well, some of the information that you guys are getting from some of these videos, if you guys are talking to other people about it, now they're gonna look at it and start subscribing to it. We don't want that. We wanna keep our community small so that all the information that we learn together, or that you may be learning from my experience, we can just hoard all that information and keep it to ourselves. With that being said, let's take a look at some of the footage that we were able to get from the iPhone and the Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera. While working on some of your projects, you may have wanted to integrate some cell phone footage or just smartphone footage in general into some of your more production footage coming out of more professional cameras, like what I'm using right now, which is the Pocket 4K. Now, obviously we don't go into the planning stages wanting to shoot our end product using cell phone footage. However, you may have a client that may have either shot cell phone footage, or he or she may have had an employee that may have shot some footage from a cell phone that he wants you to incorporate into the final project. Cell phone footage tends to come out a whole lot more digitally sharp, so we're gonna figure out a way that we can adjust some of the settings within Davinci Resolve in order to match some of the more soft footage coming out of the Pocket 4K. Now, you ain't gotta be a professional colorist to see the differences between these shots. We see the iPhone is much more contrasty, less dynamic range and exposure. And one of the first differences we're gonna see and attack first is the temperature. The 4K footage is much warmer, and since this is a beach scene, the warmer tone just makes more sense. Even though I'm gonna be adjusting the temperature of the iPhone to match the 4K, I'd like to try and match most of the other things like contrast and saturation the other way around. Making more adjustments on the footage shot with higher quality sensors and codecs is what we aim for, and this is just because smartphone footage is most likely, it's not going to survive anything past a temperature adjustment before you see colors start to kind of bend and fall apart. So let's get into a little bit more detail on how we were able to match these two clips. In this example clip, I went ahead and achieved the contrast, saturation, and exposure to something relatively workable. Obviously, we could go into more depth into the raw workflow, but in this example, I'm simply going to be going for a darker image, then starting to work a bit of saturation and contrast using the camera raw settings within Davinci located in the color tab on the bottom left. Adjusting the actual metadata within a raw video file is going to save us additional flexibility for adjusting colors later on in the grade without degrading the image, because changing the video file's metadata makes it as if we actually shot the footage with these actual settings while we were out in the field shooting it. Once I achieved a decent image within the raw clip, we can now convert this look into essentially a LUT or a lookup table by grabbing a still image from the preview window. Right-click the preview window, select Grab Still. Now this look is going to be over in our gallery in the upper left. With this image selected, if we click on split screen, This image is now a part of the preview. Change this drop down from version to selected still image. And now the still image is going to take up half the preview window, and whatever other clip we have selected in the color tab timeline is going to show up alongside of the still image. Now that I got the iPhone clip selected, I can now visually see our cinema camera footage right alongside our iPhone footage, which is going to make matching a whole lot easier, because now not only can we see the preview of both the images side by side in the preview window, more importantly, we can now see all of the scientific data pertaining to both of the images over here on the bottom right within our Luma scopes. I like to either use the parade or waveform scopes when adjusting temperature and exposure, and then when adjusting color intensity or saturation, I found it easiest to switch over into the vector scope. For overall exposure in this scene, head over to the gamma within the color wheels window, and you could adjust this setting while monitoring the waveform scope until we can get both sides to kind of start resembling each other. Next, I'm going to address the fact that our iPhone footage is clearly cooler in temperature when comparing to the Pocket 4K. So next, we can do a temperature adjustment, making the iPhone slightly warmer until we get a decent match within the preview as well as our parade scopes. Feel free to adjust any of the other color wheels as well, like for example, adjusting the lift for this scene allowed me to be able to control and match our shadows within these clips. And similarly, our gain wheel is going to allow the matching of our highlights. It's always a good idea to adjust saturation within a new node by hitting Alt-S, heading over into the RGB mixer located in the bottom left area, maxing out each of the channels. Now we can mask this node by heading over into the key tab. And I like to always set the gain to 0 and then slowly bring up the gain level until we can match the two clips' color intensity using the vector scope. Now, as far as color matching the scene, I'll specifically show you how I color match by qualifying highlights. Alt-S and Alt-L is going to create a new node as well as attaches a layer mixer. So go ahead and select the first node created, right click it, select node label, and let's label it sunset. From here, look for the qualifier near the middle of the screen. It looks like an eyedropper, and now we can select the brightest part of the sunset. In the upper left of the preview window, you're going to see something that looks like a magic wand. This is going to show you what information we've masked out. Then let's deselect saturation and hue values within the qualifier to really focus on just the highlights. You can soften the mask right here on the low end. As you slide this slider up, you'll see that the low soft rolls off the mask from the exposure value chosen and below. As far as the color of the sunset, normally I'll figure out exactly what hue I want to lean towards by referring back to my hero clip. And in the window tab, go ahead and choose a circle shape, and then let's move it over right over top of the sunset. Once again, click on the magic wand and then now head over into our vector scope to see about what color we're looking to achieve for our iPhone sunset. As you can see in the vector scope, we're looking at about an orange hue leaning slightly into the yellow. We can use the same method on the iPhone clip to focus in on the sunset. Now we can see that the iPhone sunset is kind of a little too yellow, so we can adjust the hue in the color wheels window in the offset by pulling the wheel in the direction we want the color to lean more towards. Now we can turn off the magic wand as well as the circle mask, and now we can see that our iPhone sunset kind of more resembles the same color as the sunset in our 4K footage. The Filmic Pro Vlog profile's got great dynamic range, but the first thing you're going to notice, unfortunately, is that the noise in the shadows is crazy. Which, by the way, is completely normal, but luckily for us in Davinci Resolve Studio, it has some pretty great noise reduction options. Resolve, in my opinion, has the best noise reduction by far. I've spent a couple years using Neat Video in the past, but after using Davinci's built-in temporal and spatial noise reduction options, I really can't see any other comparisons. You can start by right-clicking and creating a new node, and if you hold down Shift and drag it over to the beginning of the tree, it'll automatically link together. You can label it noise reduction or NR, whatever you decide to label it. And leaving our Luma and Chroma chain together, I found that a value of about 10 works pretty well for about 90% of the clips needing noise reduction. I also added in just a little bit of spatial noise reduction as well, and I found that between 3 and 5 generally works pretty well for most clips. You can really dive into these settings and really get into some fine tuning, but these settings should work just fine for now. But in case you'd like to experiment with some other values within these settings, or just kind of curious as to what the differences are between temporal and spatial noise reduction, temporal noise reduction reduces the noise frame by frame, and it takes the current frame and compares it to surrounding frames, and the number of frames it compares it to is chosen within the drop-down menu. Obviously, the more frames you select just simply means that the software is going to be able to compare one frame to more frames. As far as spatial noise reduction, the software is literally just going to take one frame in order to detect noise, and then the value you select determines the level of strength you want to apply the noise reduction effects. You can also unlink the Luma and Chroma values to fine tune however you want the noise reduction to apply even further, and this just depends on whatever the scene is that you shot. So here's the noise reduction before and afters for all the example footage that was used. As you can see, Davinci does a pretty good job.
That about wraps up this video, guys. If y'all got anything useful out of this video, don't forget to show me that appreciation by hitting that like button down below. It helps the channel more than you guys could imagine. Also too, guys, don't forget to check out my reframing template. It allows you to be able to keyframe better, reframe your shots, and post a whole lot better. You can check that out in the description below, especially now if you're shooting in 4K or 6K, if you have the Pocket 6K, or any K for that matter, higher than 1080 if you're editing in a 1080 timeline. We all know how that affords you the option to be able to punch in to simulate another camera angle. Now, obviously, if you're anything like me and you use your rule of thirds that's built into your camera while you're recording footage, that's all fine and dandy, but when it comes to actually reframing or keyframing in post, or making sure graphics are centered, or whatever the case may be, when it comes to being able to make sure things in the frame are where they need to be, this reframing template is all you need. All you do is click and drag this PNG over your video file, and now you're able to go ahead and reframe your shot exactly the way you want it. Anyways, guys, that's all for this video. I appreciate y'all checking this out, and I hope to see you in one of my next ones. Peace. Peace. Peace.